Marissa Doyle walked into the architecture firm with her shoulders squared and her pitch rehearsed. She'd done this 100 times. Walk in, smile, sell the vision, close the deal. Real estate was about confidence. And after a divorce and years of single motherhood, she'd learned to fake it when she didn't feel it. The receptionist led her down a hallway lined with blueprints and design awards. Through the glass walls of the conference room, she could see the team gathering. One figure stood at the head of the table, gesturing at renderings on a screen. And then he turned. Time didn't slow. It stopped. Taryn Williams, the man she'd loved a decade ago. The man she'd abandoned without explanation, without closure, without the decency of honesty. He saw her. Recognition flashed across his face. Surprise, then something that looked like sadness, and then composure, professional grace. He smiled, extended his hand. Marissa, it's been a long time. Not anger in his eyes, not bitterness. Something worse. Peace. He'd healed, built a life, moved on, and she was still stuck in the wreckage of the choice she made 10 years ago. Have you ever let someone else's prejudice cost you the person who mattered most? Drop comment, because Marissa's story will hit different. This is a story about choosing fear over love and spending 10 years paying for it. In 2009, Marissa Doyle was 20 years old and carrying the dreams of everyone who'd ever loved her. She was the first in her family to go to college, the first to leave their small Midwestern town for something bigger, something that smelled like possibility instead of limitation. Her parents had worked double shifts to make it happen. Her grandmother prayed over her every Sunday. Her younger siblings watched her like she was proof that escape was possible. The weight of all that hope was heavy, but Marissa wore like armor. She studied relentlessly, showed up early, stayed late, turned in every assignment 2 days ahead of deadline. She was polite to professors, networked at career fairs, joined the right clubs. She was building a future, brick by brick, exactly the way her family had dreamed. And then, in the library one October night, she met Taryn Williams. He was in an architecture program, a junior with quiet intensity that drew people in without him ever raising his voice. She'd noticed him before, hunched over drafting tables in the design studio, headphones on, lost in the geometry of creating something beautiful from nothing. That night, they ended up at the same study table. She was drowning in an economics problem set. He was sketching elevations for a project due the next morning. At some point past midnight, he looked up and saw her frustration. "You need a break," he said simply. They went for coffee, talked until the cafe closed, walked across campus under streetlights that turned the autumn air golden. He told her about growing up in Detroit, about learning to see beauty in broken buildings, about wanting to design spaces that made people feel safe. She told him about being the family hope, about the pressure of perfection, about how sometimes she felt like she was performing her own life instead of living it. "You don't have to perform with me," Taryn said. And just like that, something shifted. The study sessions became routine. Then the walks. Then the conversations that stretched past reason, past responsibility, into the territory of people who are falling and don't want to stop. Taryn saw her, not the achievement-driven daughter, not the first-generation success story, but Marissa, the girl who laughed too loud when something was genuinely funny, who cried during documentaries about injustice, who wanted to build something meaningful, but wasn't sure what that looked like yet. With him, she was braver, more honest, more herself. They fell in love the way young people do, when they don't yet know how much the world will ask them to sacrifice for it, easily, completely, like it was the most natural thing in the world. For 6 months, Marissa existed in 2 worlds. At home, she was still the perfect daughter, calling every Sunday, sending updates about her GPA, reassuring everyone that she was focused and on track. On campus, she was half of something beautiful. Late-night philosophy debates, shared sketches and essays, hands intertwined as they imagined futures where they built things together. She posted a photo once. Just once. A campus event. The 2 of them laughing at something off camera, his arm around her shoulders, her head tilted toward his. She thought nothing of it. 3 days later, her mother called. Marissa, we need to talk. Her mother's voice was tight, controlled, the kind of control that comes before an explosion. Marissa's stomach dropped. What's wrong? I saw the photos. From your campus page. A pause. Heavy. Deliberate. Who is that boy? Not who is he? Not, tell me about your friend. That boy. Marissa's throat closed. His name is Taryn. I know what he is, her mother interrupted. What I don't know is what you're thinking, what you're doing, what you're throwing away. Mom, I'm not throwing anything. You are the first, Marissa, the first in this family to get this opportunity. Do you understand what that means? What we've sacrificed, and you're going to risk it all for... Her mother couldn't even finish the sentence. The words caught in her throat. Not from hate, but from something more insidious. Fear. The kind of fear that gets passed down through generations like genetic code. Fear of what people will think. Fear of being different in a community that punishes difference. Fear that choosing love across lines will cost more than it gives. He's a good person, Marissa said quietly. He's smart and kind, and I don't care if he's a president, her mother snapped. This is not who we are. This is not what we do. You have a future, Marissa, a real future. Don't destroy it for some college romance that won't last anyway. Marissa wanted to argue, wanted to defend Taryn, defend herself, defend the right to love whoever made her feel most alive. But then her father got on the line. He didn't yell. He was worse, disappointed, silent, the kind of silence that feels like withdrawal of love. Then her grandmother called, crying, praying, asking God to bring Marissa back to her senses. Then her aunts, her cousins, a coordinated campaign of concern wrapped in manipulation, wrapped in, we're just worried about you. How many of us have watched someone we love crumble under pressure they didn't choose? Hit that like button if you've seen this happen, because what Marissa did next haunted her for a decade. The pressure was relentless, not violent, not screaming, just steady, suffocating, omnipresent. And Marissa was tired, so tired. She was still dependent on them, financially, emotionally, psychologically, still tethered to the identity of good daughter that she'd built her entire sense of self around. So she made a choice, not the brave one, not the honest one, the easy one. She stopped answering Taryn's calls, let his texts pile up unanswered, avoided the library, the cafe, every place they used to exist together. He tried. God, he tried. He showed up at her dorm once. Knocked softly. Marissa, I know you're in there. Just talk to me. Tell me what I did wrong. She sat on the other side of the door, hand pressed against the wood, tears streaming down her face, and said nothing. Eventually, he stopped trying, and Marissa told herself it was for the best, that she was being responsible, that love wasn't enough when the cost was everything else. She told herself a lot of lies that year. Taryn never got an explanation, never got closure, just a brutal lesson that loving someone doesn't mean they'll choose you when it matters most. Marissa graduated with honors, made the dean's list, got a job in real estate that paid well and impressed her family. She checked every box. But something inside her had gone quiet. The spark that used to animate her. The curiosity, the laughter that came easy, the dreams that felt possible, all of it dimmed to something manageable. Safe. She dated men her family approved of. Same background, same church, same worldview. They were nice, stable, appropriate, and utterly, completely wrong. She married one. His name was Kevin. He worked in finance, like golf, wanted 2.5 kids and a house in the suburbs. He was exactly what her family had wanted for her. The wedding was beautiful. Her mother cried happy tears. Everyone said they were perfect together. But on her wedding night, as Kevin snored beside her, Marissa stared at the ceiling and felt nothing. No joy, no excitement, just a hollow recognition that she'd traded authenticity for approval and called it maturity. The marriage lasted 4 years. They had a son, beautiful, perfect, the one pure thing to come from the compromise. But the relationship itself was a slow death. Functional but lifeless, like a house built on a foundation of lies. The divorce was quiet, inevitable. Kevin was relieved. So was she. At 32, Marissa became a single mother working 60-hour weeks to make ends meet, shuttling her son between soccer practice and piano lessons, paying bills, building a career, going through the motions of a life that looked successful from the outside but felt empty from within. Late at night, when her son was asleep and the house was too quiet, she thought about Taryn, wondered where he was, what he'd become, if he thought about her, if he hated her, if he'd found someone who chose him when it mattered. Meanwhile, Taryn Williams rebuilt. He finished his degree, went to grad school, became the architect he'd always dreamed of being, designing community centers, affordable housing, spaces that honored the people who would live in them. He carried the wound Marissa left, but he didn't let it define him. He learned that some people love you until it costs them something, and then they teach you that you were never worth the cost. It was a brutal lesson, but it made him careful about who he gave his heart to after that. Years passed. He built a practice, a reputation, a life, and slowly, painfully, he healed. 10 years is long enough to build an entire life, but sometimes not long enough to outrun the past. The collaboration opportunity came through a colleague. A new architecture firm downtown was looking for real estate partners on a mixed-use development project. High profile, good commission, exactly the kind of deal Marissa needed. She prepared thoroughly, researched the firm, studied the project, rehearsed her pitch until it was flawless. She walked into Glass and Steel building on a Thursday afternoon, confidence masking the exhaustion she carried like a second skin. The receptionist smiled. "They're ready for you. Conference room at the end of the hall." Marissa nodded, smoothed her blazer, reminded herself she'd done this 100 times. She pushed open the door, and time collapsed. Taryn Williams stood at the head of the conference table mid-sentence, gesturing at architectural renderings on the screen behind him. He was older, lines around his eyes, confidence in his posture that came from building something real, but unmistakably him. He turned, saw her. For one heartbeat, the room held its breath. Then Taryn smiled. Professional, warm, controlled. "Marissa Doyle," he said, extending his hand. "It's been a long time." She took his hand, felt the steadiness of his grip, the absence of trembling that betrayed her own. "Taryn." "Yes, it has." He gestured to a chair. "Please sit. We're excited to hear your ideas for the property partnership." And just like that, they were colleagues, professionals. Two people with a past that no longer mattered in the present moment. The meeting proceeded. Marissa gave her pitch, stumbling slightly, recovering, pushing through. Taryn listened attentively, asked smart questions, took notes. He was gracious, engaged, respectful, but there was no spark of unfinished business in his eyes. No lingering what if, just the calm professionalism of someone who had mourned, healed, and moved on. If you've ever seen someone who healed without you and realize you're still stuck in the same place, subscribe right now, because what Marissa understood in that moment will break your heart. When the meeting ended, they stood, shook hands again. "It was good to see you," Taryn said. And he meant it, not in a longing way, in a genuinely pleasant, no hard feelings way. "You too," Marissa managed. You've built something beautiful here. Thank you." He smiled. Then, with the kindness that used to undo her, "I hope things are good for you, Marissa." "Really?" She nodded, couldn't trust her voice. As she walked out, she saw it, the wedding ring on his left hand, glinting under the fluorescent lights. He'd moved on, built a life, found someone who chose him, and she was still carrying the weight of a choice she made a decade ago. She didn't lose him that day in the conference room. She lost him 10 years earlier. This was just the moment she finally felt it. Marissa sat in her car in the parking garage for 20 minutes before she could trust herself to drive. Her hands shook. Her chest felt tight. Tears she'd been holding back since the moment she saw him finally broke free. She called her best friend, voice cracking, barely coherent. "I saw him," she said. "Taryn, After all this time. Oh, honey, he's married, successful, happy. Marissa's breath hitched. And you know what the worst part is? Silence on the other end. It wasn't Taryn I lost, Marissa whispered. It was the version of myself I was with him. The truth of it hit like a physical blow. She'd been braver with Taryn, more honest, more alive. When she was with him, she laughed easier, dreamed bigger, existed without the constant performance of being who everyone else needed her to be. When she chose fear over love, when she let her family's anxiety dictate her heart, she didn't just lose a relationship, she lost her own integrity. Every choice after that was built on the foundation of that first betrayal. The loveless marriage, the half-lived life, the woman in the mirror she didn't fully recognize anymore. Because when you betray love for approval, you teach yourself a devastating lesson. You're not worth fighting for. And that lesson echoes through every decision that follows. Marissa had spent 10 years trying to be the woman her family wanted her to be. But in the process, she'd lost the woman she actually was. The one who laughed too loud, who dreamed impossible things, who loved without calculating cost. That woman died the day Marissa stopped answering Taryn's calls. And she'd been mourning her ever since. Prejudice doesn't just destroy relationships. It destroys the people who surrender to it. Marissa's story isn't unique. It's a pattern repeated across generations, across communities, across every family that values respectability more than authenticity. How many people have sacrificed love at the altar of what will they think? How many have chosen fear over truth because the weight of expectation felt heavier than the risk of freedom? The tragedy of Marissa's story isn't just that she lost Taryn. It's that her family's fear wasn't even rooted in hate. It was the inherited anxiety of people trying to survive in a world that punishes difference. Fear disguised as protection, bias wrapped in concern. But the cost was the same. A decade of living half alive. A marriage that failed because it was built on compromise instead of connection. A woman who looks in the mirror and wonders who she might have been if she'd been brave enough to choose herself. And here's the cruelest part. By the time you're free enough, financially independent, emotionally mature, strong enough to stand against the pressure, the person you loved is already healed without you. You're left holding regret they've already set down. Taryn moved on, built a beautiful life, found love with someone who chose him when it mattered. Marissa is still stuck in the rubble of the choice she made at 20. That's what prejudice costs. Not just the moment, the years that follow. We can't rewrite Marissa's story. The past is fixed, unchangeable, carved in stone. But we can learn from it. If you're reading this and you're facing a choice like Marissa's, if your family is pressuring you to abandon someone who makes you feel alive because of race, religion, class, or any other line they've drawn, hear this. Your family's fear is not your future. Their comfort is not worth your soul. The person who loves you authentically is not the risk. Living a lie is. You will survive their disappointment. You will not survive abandoning yourself. And if you've already made Marissa's choice, if you're carrying regret for a love you let prejudice destroy, forgive yourself. The pressure was real. The fear was real. You were doing the best you could with the tools you had. But don't let past mistakes dictate future choices. Choose brave. Choose honest. Choose love. For others, yes, but most importantly, for yourself. Because the version of you that exists when you're living authentically, that's the version worth fighting for. Marissa learned that lesson 10 years too late. You don't have to. Marissa's story spread online as a quiet warning. Don't let prejudice, yours or anyone else's, steal your chance at authentic love. If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, have you ever chosen fear over love? Or watched someone else do it? Your story matters. Share it below. Because the more we talk about this, the fewer people have to live with Marissa's regret. She lost Taryn. But worse, she lost herself. Don't let that be your story.